Hi guys, Bran here, and today we're going to be talking about the... It's a big one, and honestly, I can't believe that they finally changed. Although, I really don't like that they added base kit. That's honestly going to be really annoying to face, and don't even get me started about the whole thing. Hey, can I see your microphone for a second? Oh, yeah, sure, John Behavior, but why do you need to see it? Yeah, should be fixed now. Fixed? Was there something wrong? Yeah, you were cutting in and out. It looks like you're using our microphone instead of yours. Oh, thanks. Although I really want to ask you, if you guys have been running community streams for like 10 years, how are you still having audio issues almost every single stream? Oh, he really didn't want to answer that one. Anyways, I want the video, I guess. Hello everyone, another community dev stream is upon us, and phew, it was a big one. A lot of our worries are finally being addressed. Some worries are being addressed, but not quite in ways that actually fix the core issues, and there's a lot to sink our teeth into regardless. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and talk about it. I'm just going to cut to the chase here and talk about what you're probably here for, and that's the gameplay update. Because yes, Behavior did admit that they in fact did skip the mid-chapter, but as a result, we will be getting some changes that are dropping with the Course of Sin chapter release, and we'll supposedly only be getting necessary changes, whatever that means, for content drops in the future. So that whole thing of like, oh, changes that are major will only happen during mid-chapters, they mean more for like big perk reworks, big meta changes and shifts, that sort of thing. Apparently we will still be getting necessary changes for the actual chapter drops. Now, I don't know how much that's going to be, if it will be the same as what we're getting for Course of Sin, but I do like the idea that they're being a little bit more flexible when it comes to the whole, oh, well, we're not going to change anything if it's a chapter drop. Like, having a little bit of flexibility with that, I think, makes the most sense. So I'm glad that they're doing that. Honestly, DBD has been in a state basically for all of 2026 where the meta has not only been really solid with no significant changes, but also extremely lopsided with many perks with little activation requirements or drawbacks, flipping games from losses to wins on a whim. This has led to the game feeling extremely stale at best and extremely unfair at worst, which is not a good place for the game to be in. So I'm happy that we're finally going to start moving things forward here. First, they announced that they're going to be buffing some killer perks. Call of Brine is having its duration increase, which I will say is honestly kind of a bizarre buff because you really didn't see that whole like max duration of Call of Brine being hit at that 70 seconds anyways. So upping it to 90 seconds, I don't think is really going to buff the perk a lot, but thanks, I guess. Nurse's Calling is having its previous functionality returned to it to allow you to see when a survivor is being healed from a slug up off the floor, which is frankly something that it shouldn't have lost in the first place, that they took away as a supposed bug fix, but now they're returning it to the perk, so I guess we take those. And finally, the perk Save the Best for Last is also getting buffed, but we didn't get any specifics on how. This perk used to be the king of non-slowdown perk picks for the killer role, but unfortunately it has seen much better days. I'm interested to see how they buff it because unfortunately Save the Best for Last is one of those perks that is that if you over buff it, it becomes a nightmare, it becomes extremely egregiously obnoxious. This is a perk that you have to balance very, very carefully so it doesn't become a problem. So I hope they nail it and it doesn't end up going the other direction. Overall, these feel like very strange perks to pick and adjust, but it's very rare killer perks get buffed at all these days, so I welcome the adjustments, even if honestly I would have rather seen other perks changed here instead. Next, there are some killer perks that are receiving nerfs, some deserved and some not. Nowhere to Hide, another major non-slowdown killer pick, is having its range reduced from 24 meters down to 18. Honestly, this maintains the perk's identity as an anti-rat perk that serves the function of catching survivors ratting around generators. And on the flip side, it reduces its effectiveness on higher end killers like Blight and Ghoul, who often kick a gen and then use their quick map mobility to get even more aura reading across the map. Nowhere to Hide is honestly a really cool killer perk, so I'm glad it only got a numbers adjustment and not a full-on gunning. Corallophobia is the one here that really stumps me, as it is having its healing debuff change from 50% down to 30%. This sounds fine on paper, but they specifically said that this nerf is happening to stop egregious slugging, which to me is a massive red flag. The reason it is such a massive red flag to me is it's because it clearly shows that they still somehow have no idea why why slugging is so prevalent in Dead by Daylight right now. They are just seeing slugging as this simple black and white thing, and it's just really frankly disappointing. Slugging has increased in games the way it has because of so many base kit changes and perks that make picking up and hooking survivors a nightmare. Sort of the burden, aggressive DS, pallet density making pickups dangerous, dead hard, the list really goes on. There's so many things in the game that either make the pickup something that's potentially dangerous to the killer, or the unhook after the survivor gets off the hook even more dangerous and rigorous for the killer to deal with. The survivor's average strength more than doubles when the picking up, hooking, and unhooking process happens, leading to killers just slugging to get around it instead. They are trying to solve a problem without properly diagnosing why the problem exists. It's just honestly so frustrating to see that they just still don't get it. And it's erring on the side of this not being ignorance, but something that they're intentionally doing and refusing to understand. Community stream after community stream after community stream, we always have almost every single one of these, at least one like super hyper anti-slugging aggressive stance taken. The last stream where people kept pointing out that slugging happens more on Gideons because the pallet count, they were very naively like, man, I guess the chat just likes pallets a lot, which at the time, you know, we like to say was like, oh, well, they clearly don't get it. I'm starting to get to the other side because at this point, it's just baffling. It's starting to seem like they are aware that slugging is a problem because of what's happening to the hook process and how dangerous that becomes for the killer. They just see slugging is bad and frankly don't care. Like I don't want to make that just take that shot across the board here, because like I try to give the benefit of the doubt, I try to understand, but at this point I don't know how this could be communicated to you so much that we're not slugging maliciously. We're not slugging because we hate fun and we hate the survivors. We're slugging because hooking is a pain right now. Like there's no way you really don't get it. There's no way by this point that you don't understand. This is a willing choice, either from the top coming down to you or you are making this decision saying that slugging is just bad, no ifs, ands, or buts, and we want it out of the game. And I think, frankly, a lot of the community accuses you guys of being very survivor biased and anti-killer, which, frankly, a lot of the times people go way too far and over-exaggerate that to a massive extent. However, if this is the stance you're going to continue to take on slugging, just like, oh, well, it's bad with no nuance over and over and over again, I don't know how to really defend you from that. You clearly hate slugging and do not want to hear us out as to why it's become so popular, which I don't know what other way to say that besides you favoring one side over the other. I just think it's a really disappointing stance to take, and I wish it wasn't one you were taking. Sorry, tangent over. Anyways, our final killer perk being nerfed is one that frankly deserves it, and that being Hex Thrill of the Hunt, which is being nerfed back down to 10% slowdown per stack instead of 12%. Thrill is a perk that's quite frankly needed in the current landscape of Dead by Daylight until behavior revisits how Hex totems work in general. However, it has definitely gone into kind of the other end, into the realm of being one of the cheesiest perks in the game, allowing any killer with high mobility or scream powers or add-ons to make matches last really long amounts of time and become extremely grating at the same time. When you have somebody who's running the signature net decked hens build and they're running even a semi-strong killer, it is one of the most grating, painful experiences you can have right now as a survivor in Dead by Daylight. It is rough. However, like I said, until behavior reworks hex totems to be something a bit more stable so that a survivor can't just spawn on your hex totem to get the match and pop it right away and essentially made it to where you were just running a perk slot that was just dead the whole time, Thrill needs to be in the game still. So I appreciate that it was just overall just a numbers change and it was a tweak and not an overall gutting. Survivor perks are being looked at as well with some buffs and some nerfs. Let's talk about the buffs. Like with the killer buffs, there's some that make sense and there are some that I consider to be really odd choices. Adrenaline is having 1 more second of haste added back to the perk, which I never really hate Addy as a concept because unlike a lot of other survivor perks that we'll talk about, it's not free. You essentially spend the entire game down a perk slot, and then when you guys have almost won the game, you win the game a little bit more because now you are healthy and now you get a little boost of speed, which I think is fine. It's one of the rare survivor perks that's also strong but also earned. Usually you don't get both of those at the same time, so I don't mind this second being added back. Clean Break heals in 45 seconds instead of 60 seconds, which adds some oomph to that perk. Repressed Alliance is also being buffed to have its duration increased, though honestly I frankly don't think this is a buff, because like what you typically use Repressed Alliance for is to block a gen for a short period, so you can block a pain res, you can block a pop, and then you can get right back on it. However, if you increase the duration, yeah sure, you block the pain res, you block the pop, but you and your teammates also can't get back on that gen for longer. So this actually may end up hurting us more in the long run, but I guess we'll see how it plays out. The other perks don't have any details, but there are more perks coming that are getting buffs. And frankly, all these that I'm seeing here deserve the buff, and that being Apocalyptic Ingenuity, Moment of Glory, and Technician. These are underused and frankly very, very weak perks, so streamlining them a little bit sounds like a good plan. Now for the moment that you've all probably been waiting for, the Survivor perk nerfs, because there's some pretty good ones in here. Sprint Burst, a perk that has not been changed since April of 2017, by the way. And that interesting factoid is going down to 2 seconds of speed instead of 3 seconds. It is going down to 2 seconds of speed instead of 3 seconds. This change has been needed for a very, 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 very long time. I've talked about this before, but the strength balancing in games usually goes one of two ways. Either A, the effect is only minorly helpful, but it's easily accessible and occurs often. Something like Enduring, for example. On the flip side, you can have effects that are really strong and game-changing, but they aren't very accessible and they don't happen very often. Something like Current Dead Hard, where it can only happen twice a game per player, but if it happens at the right time in a chase, it could buy enough time to win the game. Sprint Burst has always just broken all of these rules, especially when paired with Vigil. Sprint Burst can be used to make game-changing plays with the simple press of Shift W one time. Sure, you get exhausted, but you can spend that time sitting on a gen or waiting it out with Vigil or Ghost Notes to get the exhaustion right back down. So this perk is very strong, very accessible, and happens very often. So this perk is just kind of, it's spitting in the face of the concept of balance. I had a game yesterday on Xenomorph where I was winning a game comfortably at 4 gens, but one survivor used Sprint Burst one time, they got to the pallet den side of the map and pre-dropped a bunch, and then suddenly the match got really close. I almost lost it because of that, which is wild. It is that impactful for how easy it is to activate. It has been a problem for most of the game's life cycle, so I'm happy to finally see it get knocked down a bit, and I hope other free pressure exhaustion perks like Lithe and Bounce Landing are next on the chopping block. Well, wait, there's more. You're not going to believe this, but Vigil is finally being nerfed, going down from 60% to 40% reduction. This perk was beginning to feel like a personal favorite of the balancing team with how much and for how long they absolutely refused to touch this problematic perk. I thought it was going to end up something like Hyper-Focus Stakeout, where they're just like, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's totally fair, yeah. I will say, though, I'm a little disappointed it was only a numbers tweak and not something more substantial. Vigil will still work on killer powers, making characters like Freddy and Clown still very adversely affected by this perk. I've also seen it long debated as to why Vigil gets to both buff you and your survivor team at the same time, but there was no changes in regard to that either. I appreciate that this perk got hit at all, but I am looking for more work on Vigil once the mid-chapter comes around. Finally, Deliverance is having its broken timer increase from 60 seconds to 120 seconds, which is a pretty substantial increase here. I know this will have a net positive effect on the game because I ran Deli for my entire Survivor week that I did last week, and it was such a game-changing perk in the sense that I can Deliverance and then just plot twist or find a teammate to undo the downside fairly quickly. However, this doesn't necessarily really undo what makes the perk so powerful. The thing that makes Deli so powerful is the ability to just unhook yourself without any help from your team. And you may be thinking, well, at least you have to play injured for longer, but good players realistically are already playing while injured for longer anyways. That's kind of like a smart way to play the game overall, so it doesn't really affect them in any regard. So it's just like it's one of those things where it's like it's welcome, it will technically help, but doesn't really fix the problems of the perk in general. Now here's the deal, like I mentioned earlier, Behavior did admit that they cut the planned mid-chapter we were supposed to get. I still find this very frustrating as they tried to convince us that the reason we hadn't had balance changes for a long time was because, don't worry guys, it's gonna be in the mid-chapters now, just to cancel the first mid-chapter. That inspires confidence. Thankfully, we are getting one confirmed after Chorus of Sin for sure, which is a relief. And in this mid-chapter, we're going to be getting 45 perks overall adjusted across both sides, and they are going to mostly be buffs. They said these buffs are coming in accordance with the diminishing returns changes, which I ragged on pretty heavily in my last commentary video. Diminishing returns, as a concept, I don't necessarily hate it. I don't think it's a terrible idea if executed properly. But because they just dropped it and didn't adjust almost any of the game around it, it just kind of served to gut variety in perk choices, and the stupid boring meta that everybody already runs was basically almost unaffected, period. So as a result, it kind of gained this identity of just being an anti-fun change instead of trying to encourage more perk variety. The idea on paper is if it was executed well, would be that off-meta perks would now be appearing in single perk slots thanks to adjoining buffs, but those just didn't happen. Thankfully, it's finally happening, but frankly, in my opinion, I don't think they should have dropped diminishing returns at all if they weren't ready to support it. A change like diminishing returns only works if it receives support and maintenance to it in order to supplement what it took away upon its arrival. It seems really short-sighted to just drop it at the beginning of the year and go, okay guys, just deal with it, we'll be back later. Like, that's just not addressing it again until the end of the year was a choice of all time. This is a little bit of a tangent here, and I understand, but I feel like this is just one of behavior's like consistently biggest problems, is just constantly kicking the can down the road. So many things theoretically would be fine if they just followed through with the promises they gave us, but they often don't. Hey, knotted rope on Houndmaster, how you doing? Remember when they nerfed you until you were literally unusable and then said, don't worry, we'll get back to that? Did that ever happen? Yeah, this frankly happens all the time. Behavior comes up with this change, big or small, and when it gets pushed back, they go, it's okay, we'll come back to it later. Trust me, it'll be fine later. And then it just gets lost in the shuffle and is never seen again. I just wish they would hold off on making these changes that need maintenance for them if they frankly can't do the maintenance part at all. It leaves perks, add-ons, mechanics, powers, you name it, in bad spots for egregious amounts of time with no clear light at the end of the tunnel on if these things will finally get the love that they need. I just frankly wish they didn't do this. Either way, it's hard to say right now because we don't know what these changes will be yet, but I'm glad they finally came back around to do these big perk overhaul changes to address diminishing returns' presence in the game. Finally, we're receiving a fairly controversial change to the way that survivors are affected after they are unhooked. The good news is that the base kit endurance post unhook is being reduced back down to 10 seconds from the overbuff 15 seconds. This is huge, as not only did this almost always guarantee a free out in the endgame, but it was also weaponized against the killer. Honestly, after this buff happened, even though it's supposed to de-incentivize tunneling, I almost see it exclusively used 90% of the time or more by the unhooked survivor to body block and protect the unhooked survivor instead. They turn this defensive tool into an offensive tool, which is not what it's meant for, which is really, really obnoxious. So you may be thinking, wow, this is great and awesome, right? Well, there's a downside. As compensation, they're adding elusive to that 10-second timer. I've been on this soapbox before, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but elusive, honestly, is just an unhealthy status effect that exemplifies the whole survivor invincibility philosophy that we're honestly trying to move away from. Just like when behavior invented incapacitated and applied it to the original eruption, some gameplay mechanics are frankly just bad ideas and should be rarely applied, if at all, to the game. Honestly, I really wish they would just take the L here and stop trying to shoehorn this awful status effect into the game. We tried it, we tested it over and over and over and over, and the community doesn't like it. So you should probably just let it go. Also, a small little positive caveat. We got a small update that MMR is going to be adjusted soon, saying it will no longer only track kills for killer MMR. This is a good thing because plenty of times you'll have games that end as 3 or 4K simply because the survivor's throwing, going next, that sort of thing. What happens here is that ends up propelling unprepared players with their MMR, and it forces them to go against sweaty, like super sweat squads that they are not prepared for because the game is like, oh, well, you have high MMR, so you must be doing a really good job, when really all that's happening is just a bunch of people are quitting. So you just end up mismatched with people who are not on your skill level, and it's just kind of miserable. Now, I do hope that this is a two-sided change here too, because they didn't really mention it, making sure that escaping isn't the only thing that factors into survivor MMR either, because I know that a lot of my randoms specifically play for their escape. They'll specifically throw games just to get hatched, they'll use Soul Survivor and try to get on door, and try to leave all of us for dead. And currently, the MMR encourages that, but we'll see. Another huge W is that a long-awaited feature is finally coming to the game, that being visual tutorials for each character. Many other online PvP games have done this for years, where they've had just a little video or group of images to educate players in the game about powers, characters, abilities, etc. Behavior has had this notably absent from DBD's entire lifecycle. This makes the game far more beginner-friendly by introducing this, and can even help veteran players when new content releases. I will. Hi, buddy. This honestly comes as a relief to me because one of the tinfoil hat theories behind the whole Kane controversy is that behavior was like very behind the scenes taking a very staunchly anti-new player stance by by basically making the grind much harder and therefore trying to retain these players in a very unhealthy way. So seeing something so beginner focused straight after helps alleviate those worries a little bit. Also, I just want to point this out here. He thinks I'm talking to him. I can't help but notice that the UVX clips for some reason are taking place on the Nostromo menu. What you got there, behavior? What you got? Listen, I do be the alien guy. I don't know if you noticed that. I do be the alien guy. Do you need any help fixing the xenomorph? I got you. Need a second opinion about Nostromo-related things? I got you. Maybe a Trickster-style Part 2 chapter for Alien, perhaps? Man, I got you. Hit me up immediately, please. I'm coping here, probably. I know Diego is a Xenomorph main, and since they were the ones showing off the UX changes, I imagine they just set the menu to the one that they liked, but hey, I'm just saying, it'd be really cool if my character finally got fixed. And got a soft Trickster-style rework. Maybe Nostromo can be made more fun to play on for both sides. Just saying. Any way I can help, I will. Just hit me up, you guys know me. Most of the stream, despite these huge changes, was mostly focused on the new Chorus of Sin chapter that's dropping next month. We got to see a lot of new animations, add-ons, and other stuff that was super neat. The new animation for the exiling of a survivor to the exile realm in particular is really cool and has already generated a lot of memes in the DBD social media space, which is hilarious. Overall, I think I'm pretty excited for the chapter, though we'll have to see when it gets here. Honestly, original chapters for me are very like hit or miss, because they really live or die for me based on if they're fun or not. Is the Judgment fun to play? Sure, then I'll play them. But if they're not, if they're buggy, if they're weak, if they're unfun in their gameplay loop, then I'll just move on. Same thing for the Survivor perks. If they're fun to use, I'll use them. But if not, that's just 3 more perks for the bin. That's just about how it goes for me. I want to also point out some miscellaneous things here at the end. Into the Rainbow wasn't canceled, but moved. So that's still happening, so that's good. Also on the not so bright side, the Summer Screams multi-event is coming back with a ruined version of Lights Out, where the survivors have windows of opportunity base kit if they have a lantern. Yeah, let's make the game mode all about stealth and scares and moving around in the dark and not knowing where things are, and just give them the most powerful info perk that survivors have. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Then you have Chaos Shuffle, and then you have 2v8 following up, so if you hate Q times now, they're about to get way worse. But overall, that's about it. What would I rate this community dev stream out of 10? 1 being abysmal dog water and 10 being the best stream ever. I'll give it like a 7.5 out of 10. A lot of the perk nerfs and base kit post hook nerfs were a long time coming and are much appreciated. The visual tutorials for new players is a long requested feature that will help out the new player experience a lot. A lot of the perk nerfs and buffs, other than that though, are just kind of like weird or really don't actually change the perks enough significantly, so I hope they are revisited at the very least at a mid-chapter point. I think the thing that was clear to me through this stream is that on Behavior's back end, things still seem to be very chaotic and disorganized, as there was a lot of talk about things being canceled, things being pushed back, things being reorganized, which is concerning. This, in addition to not seemingly still having a strong grasp on the game, like with the slugging example, is just raising a lot of eyebrows for me. It's been a really weird year for Dead by Daylight with a lot of decay and stagnation. So I'm hoping these next few months really will revitalize what we've been hoping for and what we want to see in the game. But I think it's very iffy, it's very shaky. It's very, very shaky. It seems like an attempt is being made, and I'm very excited to see how that attempt materializes into something good. But it still seems like there's a lot of work on their end that they need to do to get their act together, so to speak, because it still seems really shaky and really weird on their end. But what do you think about the dev stream? Has it got you more hopeful for the future of the game, or are you still pretty apprehensive? Either way, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for liking and subscribing today, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. But if I don't see you there, I'll see you when I see you, friends. Goodbye.